All right, I think I cooked up a good one for you guys. Welcome back in. I'm Jake Ellenbogen, and today we are going to talk about trade targets for the LA Rams. How can you make your team better? Well, you can do it through the draft. You can do it through free agency. You can do it through, picking up undrafted rookie free agents. You could pick up guys off of practice squads around the league, but you can also trade. And the Rams have done this plenty of times before. F them picks, essentially something that is just forever connected to the Rams and general manager Les Snead. So before we dive into that, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Be sure to follow me on all social media at JK Bogan, including Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Kick. And in addition to that, just want to let you guys know that today's sponsor is BetUS, and you can use promo code YouTube150 and get a 150% bonus match on your first deposit and 125% on your following two deposits using BetUS. If you're looking for a sports book, whether it's MLB season upcoming or NBA, NHL, or the big game, aka the Super Bowl, be sure to check out BetUS. Again, YouTube150 is the code. And as always, be sure to bet responsibly. All right, guys, I'm excited because I just watched a lot of tape. I just did a lot of research, and I think I found a pretty decent batch of players that I think could be game changers potentially for the 2025 Los Angeles Rams roster. So let's start off here. Let's start off with the running back position. And I'm going to tell you right now, okay? Quarterbacks, I didn't really see anybody I liked. The free agents in 2026 are not very good. And typically, if you're looking for to make a list like this and you're going after guys that make sense via trade, you normally have to look at who's going to be a free agent the following year. Obviously, the guys that are going to be free agents this year, very unlikely those guys are going to get traded. Not saying it's impossible, but it's unlikely. So let's talk about this. We're going to start off with a huge name that is not on the thumbnail, Travis Etienne. Okay, and I want to bring him up because he had a weird 2024 season. I mean, you talk about a guy that at one point looked like one of the better running backs in football. People were saying was the next Alvin Kamara, and now all of a sudden he's getting displaced by Tank Bigsby. He doesn't have any crazy injuries, no structural ligament damage, anything like that. He just hasn't been the same. 2024 just was a really bad year, and he missed his rookie year. We all know, really heartbreaking. His rookie year in 2021, he ends up getting his plantar fasciitis injury. He's done for the year. But then after that, you really saw him emerge as one of the better running backs in football. This past year, though, he just didn't look very good. Now, this guy runs a 4.4. He, in 3 seasons, had 2,686 rushing yards, 18 rushing touchdowns, 138 missed tackles forced, 64 10-plus yard runs, 132 receptions on 160 targets for over 1,000 yards. And he finished 2024 with 189 touches. Mind you, that's after having 325 the following year, the year before. It's really interesting to me because, his rookie year, he had 255 touches. Then he goes up to 325. Then he goes down to 189. Etienne has only fumbled once in the last 2 years. He has basically been one of those key contributors on the Jaguars offense, but this past year just wasn't very good. Yards per carry average was below 4. I mean, it was last year too, to be fair, but he was more of a bell cow last year. This year, he just felt like they were kind of transitioning on and moving on from him and moving on to Tank Bigsby, who rightfully so, Tank Bigsby was the better running back in Jacksonville this year. I mean, he just was. So it was more so performance-based, but maybe he just needs a change of scenery. The Jaguars weren't exactly great. Trevor Lawrence was out. They were using a different quarterback. Offensive line wasn't great. They traded away their left tackle, mid-season in Cam Robinson. So there are things that could have contributed to this. But, I think he'd be a great buy low option. I do want to point this out. I think he can come back from what we're talking about. I think he can get back to where he was as a pass catcher, as a pure runner. All that stuff, I'm not concerned. I mean, the guy made 138 tackles missed, okay? But my issue has been pass pro. I just think 5 sacks allowed, 33 pressures on 235 reps. It's like average, but honestly, he just did not look good at all in 2024. I mean, he looked horrendous in pass protection. I was just watching the tape, and I just was not overly impressed with him. I don't know what happened. I'm not saying he was the greatest pass protector, but I mean, you could definitely see why they were just like, all right, we can't keep him on the field like this. So, great buy low option, former first-round pick, has breakaway speed, could complement Kyren Williams well, because I know a lot of you want the explosion. I do too. Wanted it last year. There were a few running backs I looked at. They went with Blake Corum, who they may or may not regret taking just because he doesn't have that breakaway speed. But the Jaguars did pick up his 5th-year option, so it's going to be about $6.1 million on the cap. And for that reason, I think Travis Etienne is going to be wicked cheap. I mean, I'm talking a 2025 7th-round pick this year. I'm not even kidding you. I think the perfect example of this, you look at Cincinnati. All right, Cincinnati had a starting running back, one of the better running backs in football, in Joe Mixon. They just did not seem to have, did not see eye to eye at the end of the road, and so they moved him for a 7th-round pick last year to the Houston Texans. He had a great year in Houston, but I just think Mixon is playing at a much higher level than Etienne right now. So I'm gonna have to say Etienne, if he gets more than that in return, say they trade him, it's gonna be a 6th at most. I think this is about the time, if you were going to trade for a guy like this to me is buying the dip. You are buying the bottom. So you either believe in him and you do it, or you don't do it. But either way, I think you can look at, if a precedent has been set, like it's a court of law. That's how I look at it with trades. And the precedent has been set. Joe Mixon, he was coming off a good year, and he ends up only bringing in a 7th-round pick. So I don't think Etienne, coming off a terrible year, is going to bring in more than that. So that's what I have there. Would the Rams do it? I don't think so. But I think they might go with the next guy I'm going to mention. All right, next up, Rachaad White, another running back here. I only got 2 on this list, and Rachaad White, like Etienne, is going through almost the same exact thing, getting displaced by the newer, brighter, more exciting player in Bucky Irving. But here's the deal with Rachaad White. Still 4.4 speed. You still have that explosion, all that. In 3 seasons, he has 2,084 rushing yards, 10 rushing touchdowns, 77 missed tackles forced. So he's not necessarily forcing as many missed tackles as an Etienne. Etienne can run through guys. He can make guys miss, all of that. 41 10-plus yard runs, obviously not as much as Etienne. But here's where I just think he's better than Etienne, okay? There's actually 2 things he's way better than Etienne at. The first thing is, as a receiver, 165 receptions on 181 targets for 1,232 yards and 11 receiving touchdowns. I don't know what happened with Rachaad White, because for whatever reason, he went from having a huge workload to start off the season week 1 to barely even having any sort of workload the last 2 games of the year. I don't think it was injuries. I think just Bucky Irving took over. But here's the deal, guys. He only gave up 2 sacks and 19 pressures for his career in pass pro. When you watch him on film, it's not just the stats. He shows up in pass pro. He makes a lot of things happen where they asked him to come in on 3rd down, step up in the face of pressure, and really, laid the wood. And it gave Baker an opportunity to convert that 3rd down and long quite a few times. So, he shows out, on tape in that regard, but also as a receiver. I just think the thing that has been missing in the Sean McVay offense since the beginning of the Sean McVay era has been the screen game, has been the receiving game out of the backfield. And I'm not saying Kyren can't do it. I'm not saying Blake Corum can't, or Cam Akers couldn't, or Darrell Henderson couldn't. I'm saying there's not a trust factor there where they are utilizing it the way they did with Todd Gurley. And I think there lies the issue, because when all else fails, the Rams just don't have the screen game to rely on. You're just hoping they get about 2 or 3 of them a game. But really, they do not do it very often. And so I think Rachaad White might change that. It was interesting. Just the other day, Sean McVay talked about how, he wanted more versatility in the offense. He brings up watching Bucky Irving. But I almost looked at that as, if you've really watching the tape and you're watching Tampa, then you definitely saw Rachaad White. And Rachaad White embodies what you look for as a Rams running back. The idea of bringing in Rachaad White on the cheap, to go with Kyren Williams. This is not a guy like Etienne that has a huge name that is going to be constantly trying to fight for the starting job. This is a guy that is going to help you in pass pro so you can keep him on the field, and Kyren, you could do some mixing and matching, and he can help you in the receiving game on a level that no running back has been able to do since Todd Gurley. So I think White is really kind of a sneaky gem here that you could take advantage of the fact that he's even available potentially. The offensive coordinator's gone. Ironically, he's going to Jacksonville. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But I just think White's usage, week 1, 21 touches, 106 total yards, to then only 3 touches in the playoff game and 0 touches in the playoff clinching game in week 17. It tells you that they're moving away from him. They're phasing him out of the offense. And I just think this is a great fit because Kyren and him can both protect the passer. And Sean McVay doesn't have to worry about, if I bring him in, now I can't do this, this, and this. You can check in and out of plays knowing both guys can do both things. Now, would I take Kyren Williams as the pure runner over Rachaad White? Absolutely. But White is bigger. So there is that going for him. And again, pass pro, again, receiving game. I think he could add a dynamic there where if you don't really like the Ty Johnson idea that I had, going out and getting Rachaad White for cheaper, I think would make a lot of sense. So what does that mean? Well, his performance escalator is estimated to put him at $3.2 million in the cap hit in 2025. I have a cost of a 2025 6th-round pick. I think he's better than Travis Etienne for what the Rams are looking for. I think Etienne, if he figures it out, he gets back to where he was, he could be a top 5, top 10 running back in the league, whereas Rachaad White's never going to be that. But Rachaad White is arguably a top 3 to top 5 receiving back in the NFL when utilized. So I think White is almost in the exact same boat as Etienne, but I would actually argue that Etienne put himself in that boat because of his lack of success in his game. And I think the Bucs just moved with the hot hand when it came to Bucky Irving. I think that, what Rachaad White does, he does a lot of things that keep you on a football field, whereas Etienne does not necessarily dominate in pass pro. And if you don't do that and you're struggling to run the football, you're not going to get on the field. So I do think Rachaad White, for that reason, fits the Rams better. So I like him more here. I think he's a better receiver, pass protector. I'll give the nod to Etienne as a pure runner. But he'd cost half as much of the cap space as an Etienne. Wouldn't be shocked if they traded for Etienne. I wouldn't be shocked if they trade for any of these guys on this list that I'm going to show you. But I do think that Rachaad White is more likely. I think it's an actual real possibility here that they go this route because it doesn't on a kind of a rental here, because that's what it would be. It would be a rental unless they brought him back. On a rental, this is kind of a win now move, and you're not spending a ton, and you're not also, by doing this, you're not drawing a line in the sand saying we're done with you, Blake Corum. This really kind of gives Blake Corum an opportunity where he still stays in the mix, but make no mistake, if you draft a guy in the 3rd round or 2nd round or 1st round this year, Blake Corum is pretty much done. Like, he is not in the picture. So I think this type of move keeps Blake Corum in the picture if you're still interested in that, but it also adds to an offense and gives them a dynamic that they haven't had since 2018. So I think that for that reason and that alone, I think it's definitely worth it. So again, 6th round pick in 2025 for Rachaad White, 1 year of him. And who knows, maybe they re-up. All right, wide receiver room time. We got two. Number one here, not necessarily going in order. Both of these guys are insane. They both hail from Ohio State. First one is Chris Olave, who is going to be 25 this year. He's one of the best receivers in the game. The reason why I'm even talking about him being available is because his concussions have people horrified. Not just concerned, not just worried, horrified. We're talking about 5 concussions since 2020. We're getting into Wes Welker and Brandon Cooks territory, and I'm not saying that as a joke. I am concerned as well. But when you have a guy that runs a 4.26 40, and you have a guy who's had 191 catches on 295 targets for 2,567 yards and 10 touchdowns, and just somebody that can get open, can be your X, can win over the top in those 3 seasons he's played in, with 2 years of control because of the 5th-year option, it's hard not to at least entertain it, right? So, former first-round pick, 5th-year option, all that. The Saints may not trade him. I mean, that's certainly possible. But I think when you look at, the Saints and everything, and just kind of the position they're in right now, they don't even have a coach that wants to coach for them right now. That's where we're at. So they don't have a ton of assets. I know they got 3 picks for, Marshawn Lattimore, but they don't have a ton of assets. So this to me is one of their bigger assets that they could move and get more picks, and they could get off Olave and not have to worry about so much of the, the gamble with all those injuries. Because, one more concussion, he could retire. I'm not saying that will happen, but it is a concern. So, they may need to package a player like Olave and try to build back up their roster. It's going to be a new regime. You're going to have a new coach, all of that. You kind of have to start from scratch. You're in cap hell. You have to get yourself out of it. So to me, Olave is a perfect fit for the Rams' X receiver position, would work perfectly with Puka Nacua and likely Jordan Whittington and whoever else they put in this wide receiver room. What would the cost be? It's very interesting. And this was a tough one. I tried to look back. Is there a precedent here? You could say, okay, Brandon Cooks, but he didn't really have the concussion concerns, I think, that he had after the Rams. I don't think he had them before he came to the Rams. I was looking. I just didn't really, not 5 anyway. So I'm going to say this. I think it's a 2025 third-round pick. And in addition to that, the Rams also give up a 2026 second-round pick with incentives to boost it to a first-rounder in 2026 based on how many snaps, so the percentage of snaps he plays in that season. I think that is the fairest deal that you are going to find. Otherwise, he's too good to trade away, and you're just going to suck it up and hope that he stays healthy. But considering we're dealing with 5 concussions on his resume, there is still a major risk that the Rams are taking on a guy that could be done, on one hit, right? So I think a third-round pick is definitely fair. And then the escalator for that second rounder the following year to turn into a first rounder is also fair. What this allows the Rams to do is acquire a number 1 wide receiver to go with another number 1 wide receiver, fill the X role, and be able to have a deep threat for Matthew Stafford to have in potentially his final season if he comes back. I do believe he will. But in addition to that, it keeps that first rounder open where if you wanted to get crazy, you could draft maybe even Ibuka, from the Ohio State Buckeyes as well. Or you could go out and you could get Ty Warren, or you could go out and, get Loveland from the Michigan. I just feel like keeping that first rounder is a big deal here, and I just can't justify trading it away. And I think this is a fair deal because Garrett, you look at, say, Garrett Wilson, right? Wilson, we're going to talk about here in a sec, has a lot going for him, and there's really no red flags. But this is a major red flag for a guy like Chris Olave, who is one of the better young receivers in football, But this is a tricky one. So you're going to have to do some like incentive-based deal. And since we're talking about a 2025 draft pick, you can't just have an escalator on that. We need to have a season played. So that's where the future picks come in. So that's how I would see it. 2025 third round pick and a 2026 second round pick with escalators to boost into the first round. That's how I like it. I'm not saying they have to do it, but that's, I think, the fairest deal that you can make considering the risk that you'd be taking on with this. 5 concussions is not just, oh, it's a concussion. No, it's a big deal, and it could lead to him retiring fairly early. Garrett Wilson, 25 years old this year. He's already one of the best young receivers in football. He's played in every single game since entering the league, all 51 games. However, there's a chance he wants out of the Jets organization. We've already heard the rumors, specifically if Aaron Rodgers returns. And, now we know that Aaron Glenn really wants to have the conversation of Rodgers coming back. So there's a chance that Garrett Wilson might want to have the conversation of him leaving. And so a guy that ran a 4.38 40 time, 3 seasons, caught 279 balls for 3,249 yards and 14 touchdowns, 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons for him. Same as Olave, you get 2 years of control because of the 5th-year option being a first-round pick. He's got the familiarity with current Rams offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur. He'd be an incredible receiver to go with Puka Nacua, just like an Olave. But what would the cost be? I'm not going to go crazy on this because we've talked about him quite a bit on this channel, but I think the cost is very simple, okay? I really thought about it. And I know I said, oh, yeah, maybe they could get away with the second rounder. It's going to take a first, guys. It just is. I'm going to be real with you. Looking back at the precedents, there's one that is very, very clear. It's a no-brainer. It's the best comparison that I could find. It's A.J. Brown when he was traded from the Titans to the Philadelphia Eagles. He was traded for a 2020, well, at the time, he was traded for a first-round pick the same year and a third-round pick. To me, Garrett Wilson would cost you your first-round pick and your third-round pick, and you would not be picking until your compensatory pick that you got from the Raheem Morris hiring by the Falcons. You would not be picking until the hundreds. So that's up to you. But some people might be balking at that. I just think if you're able to get a Garrett Wilson, this team doesn't have a lot of needs. I'd be okay with it. I would sign off on it. I'm not saying that'd be my go-to. I think I'd rather get the Chris Olave deal done if they can do it for that value. But Garrett Wilson is a special talent, great receiver. He can be your X, but he can also work all over the field. He's very interchangeable, just like Nacua. So that would be tough, but I know it's a lot. But keep in mind, this is a guy that's had 3,000-yard seasons in a row, whether it was Zach Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Flacco, and Mike White throwing him the football. He is the real deal. He has been since he came into the league. And he just creates separation like it's not even an issue. Not to mention, could you imagine the crazy, spectacular, fantastic catches that you would see with him and Nacua in the same game likely? I mean, he's got some of the craziest catches I've ever seen. And so does Nacua. You have a guy like that. I think Stafford would play longer than... I think Stafford might go for 3 years if they went out and got Garrett Wilson and paired him with Puka Nacua. Are you kidding me? But yes, it'd be pricey. We're talking A.J. Brown type of trade. That, to me, that precedent has been set, and I think that is the best comparison for that. So now we move on to the position that you guys know. You knew all along we were going to talk about the tight end position. I've been saying it for a while. The Rams need a tight end. Now, I love Tyler Higbee, but the Rams need a tight end to go with Higbee. They need a tight end for the future as well. So this isn't for the future. This is a F them picks move. This is, I don't give a damn. I'm going to go out and I'm going to get the best football players possible. And we're going to see if we can maximize this season with Matthew Stafford, because we were 14 yards away from going to the Super Bowl, because nobody that is watching this, even if you're a Commanders fan, believes that the Commanders were going to beat the Rams at SoFi Stadium. Nobody. So they were 14 yards away. Be that as it may, they are not going to the Super Bowl this year. So how do they change that for moving forward? Well, you go out and you get guys that can contribute in a big way that can create dynamics to your offense that you don't currently have. We talked about Rachaad White doing that, potentially Travis Etienne doing that, definitely Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. What about Mark Andrews from the Ravens? 29 years of age this year. He's one of the best tight ends in football. He's played in 104 games. There is a chance that Andrews gets moved, considering the fact the Ravens are in the bottom half of the league in cap space, and they're going to have to pay Isaiah Likely at the same time as Andrews. They both hit the market after this upcoming season. So I think they make the tough decision, and I think they're going to move on from Andrews. I think they end up going with Isaiah Likely. There's precedence behind this. I'll get to that in a sec. But in 7 seasons, this is a guy that's caught 436 balls for 5,530 yards, 51 touchdowns with Lamar Jackson. I don't care what anyone says. And of course, even before Lamar Jackson, I don't care what anyone says. This guy, I know he dropped the 2-point conversion, but you would take Mark Andrews on this team. Mark Andrews with Tyler Higbee in those 12 personnel groupings, or maybe even 11 personnel, and you flex one of them out wide, could be so dynamic. And it's not just to say, what are they going to do with Puka Nakua's, in the wide receiver room? They could add another guy there. I think Andrews would be cost effective here. Maybe not in the realm of, say, how much money he would be, because the cap is going to be a decent hit here. But I think it would be the move that kind of reminds people, hey, I know you haven't seen us in the Super Bowl since 2021, the 2022 season, but we didn't go anywhere. We're coming for you. And so he's not the greatest blocking tight end, but what he could do in the red zone where this team has struggled, I think he could be huge for this team. So this is a rental. This is you admitting, look, we do not care if we get fleeced on this deal. We don't care if we have to spend a little bit more than we want to. We're just going out and getting a guy that we believe can help us win a Super Bowl and take us over the top. And it's not just going to be him. If they do this, they're obviously going to make other moves. But this is one of those moves that you do to really bolster an offensive attack. And the offense was the issue. People can talk all they want about how, yes, you can upgrade this and upgrade this on the defense, but the offense was an issue. And Mark Andrews is a touchdown machine. Like I said, 51 touchdowns in 7 seasons. So where does that leave the Rams? Well, I think it would cost you a 2026, yes, I said that, next year's 5th round pick and Darion Kendrick. Kendrick is expected to make $3 million because of the elevation for performance bonus. So he's expected to make $3 million this year. Kendrick is looking at either a 4th or a 5th spot in the cornerback room. And who knows if he's going to be able, unfortunately, coming off a major injury, if he's going to be able to beat out some of these corners. I'm excited for Kendrick. I want him to get an opportunity. But if you have a chance to get Mark Andrews for Darion Kendrick in a 5th rounder in 2026, are you really going to say no? I don't really see that. Now, where's the precedence, and why am I bringing up Darion Kendrick? Well, Kendrick is maybe a little bit overkill here, but in the past, this trade echoes Zach Ertz. Ertz is a player that right around 29, 30 years old was traded away to the Arizona Cardinals for Tay Gowan, a young corner who had some upside, and then a 5th round pick. And it was a future 5th round pick. So I look at this as in kind of that light where, the Eagles trade away Ertz because they knew that they had Dallas Goedert. He was going to be their guy. And when you look at the Ravens, it's very clear they really like Isaiah Likely. So I'm not saying it's a guarantee that they trade away Andrews, but I am kind of expecting him to be on the block at least. So with that, you take Kendrick's $3 million off the books. That goes to the Ravens. The Ravens, who need some help in the cornerback room. Brandon Stevens is going to be a free agent. They have Trey White, who's going to be a free agent. Darion Kendrick comes over, cost-effective deal and everything. Good player. They have a good coaching staff over there. They can get the most out of him. And then, now you take that $3 million off the books. And Andrews, which, you do the trade, maybe you make some things happen. Andrews all things considered, would end up being about $7 million against the cap instead of maybe $14 million. So there are some things the Rams can do to make this hurt less. But I do think that's a good deal if they can make something like that. And like I said, Zach Ertz is a really good example, and the precedence is there. I would even say Kendrick is definitely more of an overkill than Tay Gowan. But be that as it may, I think that would get the deal done if they were willing to move on from him. Moving on, speaking of moving on, you got another tight end, another 29-year-old this year. I love David Njoku. He had to make this roster. He had to make this list. I mean, I was saying he'd be the perfect fit in the Sean McVay offense. I wanted him during the trade deadline, in a contract year, decent cap size, or cap hit. This Browns team isn't expected to win much this year. What is the point of keeping this guy on a contract year? Like, why wouldn't you just trade him, get something for him? You should have done it at the deadline. 8 seasons, and Njoku's caught 351 passes for 3,769 yards and 30 touchdowns. A little bit of a late bloomer, had some moments in early on in his career where you're like, oh, okay, maybe he's not that great. He's really come on strong the last few years. This would be a rental like Andrews unless they re-upped his deal. I just love the combo of him and Higbee. I think Njoku is a better blocker than Andrews, but I think Andrews is more reliable because Andrews has been doing it for a lot longer, more consistently. But I think this would be a 5th-round pick in 2025 and a 5th-round pick in 2026, and that would get the deal done. The reason being is because you have Njoku as a decent-sized cap hit. You got Njoku's on a contract year, and why would the Browns care to add another corner when they're probably going to try and get rid of one of their 3 corners, whether that's Denzel Ward at a high price or 2 of the other guys in Greg Newsome and Martin Emerson. I mean, that's the thing, is I don't think necessarily that same trade for Andrews makes sense for the Browns. So I have 2 picks here, a 5th rounder this year and a 5th rounder next year. I could potentially see Blake Corum. I don't think the Rams will trade him, but I could see teams asking about him. And if it was like a Blake Corum for David Njoku, straight up trade, I think I might do that. But anyway, we move on. Last but not least here on the tight ends, Kyle Pitts. Yes, I had to finally mention him. I see you guys talk about it all the time. I know. Kyle Pitts, 25 years of age this year. Probably the most requested name in Rams fan history. I'm just kidding. But seriously, if I had $1 for every time somebody dropped a comment saying, hey, what about Kyle Pitts? Hey, should the Rams trade for Kyle Pitts? Is it Kyle Pitts? Kyle Pitts? Kyle Pitts? Kyle Pitts? I'd be rich, which I'm not hating. I love that desire, right? You love your team so much. You do the research. I appreciate it. It's just funny. So Kyle Pitts in 4 seasons has 196 receptions, 2,651 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Pitts has played in 61 games and started 55 of them. He had his 5th-year option picked up. That decision happened last year. It has to happen a year before. $10.8 million against the cap currently. So that's going to be a little much. I don't think the Rams would do that. But the Rams could definitely use him to bolster that passing attack. Now, because of that cap hit, I think that they would have to move that money around a little bit. They'd have to do something. Okay, the Falcons would have to take on some of it. It's fully guaranteed. That's the way those 5th-year options work. So they'd have to do something. With that said, I think the Rams could get him for a 6th-round pick with escalators to go up to a 4th-round pick in 2026. So that's the way I see that going. I don't think they could really do that without the escalators in place. And what I mean by escalators is okay, if he ends up playing X amount of snaps, it becomes a 5th-round pick. If he gets to 800 yards receiving, it's a 4th-round pick, that type of thing. He's coming off back-to-back 600-plus yard seasons, but he's definitely considered a disappointment. I don't like saying bust, but he's definitely considered a disappointment at this point, and he has not lived up to that 4th overall billing. So I think that would get it done. Kyle Pitts with Sean McVay would be fun to watch. That's for sure. Moving on, we have offensive tackle Evan Neal, 25 years of age, former 7th overall pick in 2022. He has had a dreadful start to his NFL career, but does he make sense to take a flyer on? I think he does. 3 seasons, he's played 29 games. He started 27 of them. He's given up 11 sacks, 85 pressures, and nearly 1,000 snaps, 18 penalties over the course of time. I feel like looking at the tape, he might be playing out of his position. He might be a guard. He might be a left tackle, but he just doesn't feel super comfortable. When he is comfortable, however, and he does have those reps where he wins, like he definitely looks like he's controlled the rep. You can see he has that kind of dominant nature in him, but it's going to take some work. So, I see a guy that had significant improvement from 2023 to 2024, doesn't even look like the same player he was in 2022, but he's still not a great player, right? He significant improvement means he was horrendous to now he's just probably below average. He's not horrible, but he's below average. He has some, when he loses a rep, it's like meme worthy. So that's my issue, is that he loses reps badly. Like, could I trust him with Matthew Stafford in age 37, age 38, whatever? I don't think so. I would need to see more development. So make no mistake about it. This isn't, hey, cut Rob Havenstein, go out and get Evan Neal. This is, to me, you're talking about a starting left tackle at Alabama in college, moved over to right tackle in the NFL because of Andrew Thomas. He's only played at right tackle the whole career for 1,657 snaps. I know he played at right tackle in the past at Alabama, but not nearly as much as left tackle, and he didn't finish his career at left tackle. So I feel like that move might have thrown him off a little bit. But the way I see it is this. If he's available, get him in the room with Ryan Wendell, Mike Munchak, see if there's any chance to turn him into the monster that he was supposed to be. It's really that simple. If you believe that he's possible, if that's possible, if you believe in your coaching staff, then you send a 2026 6th round pick or a 2026 7th round pick to the New York Giants, see if they accept it. If they do, then now you have a reclamation project. The Giants might be done with Neal, honestly. If that's the case, I think this is an easy move to make. He's got 2 years left, under control. Now, of course, that 5th-year option's there. They might not pick that up, but to me, that's why this isn't a 7th round pick situation. I'd lean 6th round pick, and that cap hit is $7.8 million. So that is something there. The Giants would have to take on some of that for this to be, to work. But I think it makes sense, especially say they do make it work out at right tackle, and it's just been poor coaching with the Giants. Well, now you have your future behind Rob Havenstein when he leaves, or God forbid Alex Jackson doesn't sign, and you bring in Evan Neal and you sign somebody and Evan Neal beats him out and he looks really good at left tackle. There you go. You don't know how things are going to work out. And before you say this guy's trash, I've watched him, all of that, they said the same thing about Mekhi Becton, and he's playing in the Super Bowl. And a big reason why they're playing in the Super Bowl is because of what he was able to do on that offensive line. He was a monster this year. And I remember covering him with the Jets and thinking, this guy just isn't utilized correctly. He feels like a guy that should be better. Is it coaching? I don't know. Goes to the Eagles. And sure enough, they turn water into wine over there on the offensive line. So, I don't think you can worry about Evan Neal going to the Eagles. There's no way the Giants will trade him there. But you get my point. There's definitely a precedence that has been set there. All right, next up we got linebacker Troy Andersen. This is a 26-year-old this year, 2nd round pick in 2022 out of Montana State. He's had a hard time staying healthy. That's really been his issue. Could the Rams call up their buddy Raheem Morris and offer him a deal? I don't know, but 3 seasons. He's only started 11 games, played in 26. When he's on the field, I think the athleticism really speaks for itself. Jumps right off the page. He's got the potential to be a great linebacker, but I just think that the injuries are enough to really sway a team. Like, if I can get anything for this guy right now, I'm going to do that because I got the draft upcoming. Like, I could just move on. So the way I see it is this: torn pec, knee injury this year. It's taken up most of his career early on, but he's a great coverage linebacker. He plays the run well. He'd be an upgrade in that linebacker room if he can stay healthy. You get him with Reggie Scott. How does that work? We'll see. But to me, the cost would be a 2025 6th-round pick. The Falcons, they're probably used to playing without him at this point, and I just think he's in a contract year. This would likely be a rental to go maybe into an extension, like, say, Dante Fowler Jr. with the Rams. I just think that they might want to keep the linebacker room cheap. I know they may feel, or we may feel, oh, there's a way to upgrade, talk about Jamie Sherwood and guys like that, but they might want to just go this route. They might want to go cheap here, and I like the fit with Troy Andersen. If he stays healthy, he's a really good player. It's just a matter of if he stays healthy. So that's that. Wouldn't cost you a ton. Next up, linebacker, who I talked about way too much during the trade deadline. Vintage Les Snead move, if there ever was one. Linebacker from the Jacksonville Jaguars, Devin Lloyd. Lloyd in 3 seasons started 46 of 48 games he's played. He has 355 tackles, 4 fumble recoveries, 4 interceptions, and 19 pass breakups. We already talked about earlier, but Christian Rozeboom is going to be a free agent. Like, he's hitting free agency. Is he going to be back? I don't know, but this would be a major upgrade as a tackler. Just simply as a tackler, he just doesn't miss tackles. He's one of the best tackling linebackers, if not the best, in the NFL. Devin Lloyd is, but he is a liability in coverage, so that is something that would potentially be an issue. He's got 2 years of control. The 5th-year option kicks in. Only $4.1 million cap hit in 2025, which is nice. To me, I look at this. He's not as good, but I look at this guy similar to Roquan Smith. Roquan Smith was traded to Baltimore from the Chicago Bears. That netted the Bears a 2nd and a 5th-round pick in the same draft. Keep this in mind. Roquan Smith was $575K cap hit. So to me, I think a 3rd and a 5th is realistic. I think the Rams have to move a 3rd-round pick in 2025 and a 5th-rounder in 2025, and I think they can make that work. New regime and everything, move on from Devin Lloyd, kind of start over, get some draft capital for your brand new head coach, Liam Cohen, to have some fun with, and new GM. Devin Lloyd was a Trent Baalke player. He was not a Liam Cohen player. He was not, this new regime. So I think there's a real chance Devin Lloyd is traded, and I think the Rams would be a great fit for him. He and Omar Speights would be a great tandem, and I think that they would have that box checked for quite a while, considering, if they were able to bring him back and sign him long term. So last but not least, we got the final 2 here, and they both play for the same team, and they both play the same position. We're talking about 2 cornerbacks, Martin Emerson, who I talked about earlier, and Greg Newsome II. Emerson had a down year, okay? So don't get me wrong. I mean, he had a down year, and I think that's the thing, is when you look at Emerson's 2023 season, it was really impressive, guys. I'm not kidding you. So Emerson had a down year. Browns may look to trade him. He was a 2022 3rd-round cornerback. His cap hit goes up to $2 million, or goes up by $2 million due to the performance escalator. That said, Emerson could be a steal of an option for the Rams. I look at him, 6'2", 200-pound corner. 3 seasons, Emerson started 33 of 50 games. He's played in, come down with 4 interceptions, 34 pass breakups, 202 tackles. I think his issue is really just coming off a dreadful year. We're talking giving up 6 touchdowns, 108.7 passer rating targeted. The previous year, though, in 2023, he just blew up. Like, he was insane. 33 catches given up on 70 targets, 0 touchdowns, caught all 4 of his 4 career interceptions in 2023. And you wouldn't even believe it if I told you this, but his targeted passer rating, and he started the full season, was 45.3, one of the best in the NFL. And honestly, having that crazy of a targeted passer rating, it's just rare, man. He was just fantastic in 2023. He's now in a contract year. The Browns may choose between him and Greg Newsome II, like I just mentioned. They both are entering free agency in 2026. Emerson's penalties, however, could be an issue. He's had 23 over 3 years. To me, that's very concerning. You develop that pattern, but not just the technique issue. It's also the fact that now he has that reputation. So officiating is going to be on him a little bit more than others. You don't get that free pass. So that is something to keep in mind. What would it cost? I think a 2025 fifth-round pick does it. I look back at deals like Rasul Douglas to the Bills or Jeff Okudah or, Stephon Gilmore in the past, and I think a fifth-round pick for an expiring deal, a player coming off the worst season of his career, is absolutely fair value. So that's what I think it would take for Emerson. And then Greg Newsome the second, 4 seasons. He has 42 starts in 54 games, 3 interceptions, 34 pass breakups, 155 tackles. He just hasn't played as many snaps as Emerson. He's never looked as good either. And he's coming off the worst year of his career as well, allowing not as many touchdowns, only 4, but 120.7 target passer rating, which is dreadful. He's physical. He doesn't commit as many penalties as you would think. Emerson has committed 23 in 3 seasons. And Newsome is only, he's only had 13 in 4 seasons. So when you look at him, his cap hit is way higher than Emerson's, 10 million more than Emerson's. So that needs to be worked out. He's got the skill set. To me, that would be really intriguing for the Rams. I look at him as a 2025 7th-round pick. He's a former first-round pick, but he hasn't really been anywhere near as good as Emerson or anywhere near as good as maybe they were hoping for. He's got a very, very nice skill set, but I just don't necessarily think that he has put enough on tape for me to feel comfortable giving up more than a 7th-round pick this year. So with that said, I will say this. If I'm the Rams and I can get Martin Emerson and put him with Akello Witherspoon on the outside and then have Kobe Durant in the slot, I'm feeling very good. Martin Emerson Jr., I think it would make a lot of sense. He's a guy I liked in the draft, went in the 3rd round like I mentioned. Newsome is going to have interest. He's got that skill set. He's got the physicality. People like that. The thing that concerns me about Emerson are the penalties, but I think he'll be better with the Rams. I think, if he comes over the Rams, I think he'd be coached up well. And I think having him and Akello and Kobe, that'd be a really nice trio, very underrated trio. It would be a rental potentially, but man, trying to win a Super Bowl and getting, Emerson, if you got that 2023 play out of him, good luck throwing on this team. So that's what I got for you guys. If I had to pick my favorite out of this, like the most realistic favorites, I'm going to say Rachaad White. I think he is the most likely Ram of the bunch. I'm then going to say Mark Andrews, because I really could see Mark Andrews here. I could also see Kyle Pitts. And last, I'm going to say Martin Emerson would probably make the most sense if they do that. But I'll go with Devin Lloyd. I'll say Devin Lloyd. I think Lloyd, I'll say Lloyd, Rachaad White, and I'm actually going to change this. Lloyd, Rachaad White, and Kyle Pitts. That is what I'm going to go with for the top 3 most likely. But we'll see what happens. Hope you guys enjoyed. Long video. Like I said, I was going to do the trade one. Trade one's done. Free agents are done. Now we get into the tape. Right. We also still have to do mailbag. I didn't forget about you guys. So you still have time to throw them in the mailbag. If you got any questions, it's going to be a long one, I'd imagine. But that's going to do it. So appreciate you guys. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Be sure to check out today's sponsor, BetUS. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take care, folks. Later. All right, guys, just a quick update here. The lounge, which I've told you guys about after every single video, we are now at 6 videos. We have almost 700 subscribers. So if you haven't gotten in and checked out my new side project, definitely be sure to do that. Interviewing voice actors and athletes and entrepreneurs, musicians, all the good stuff there. Be sure to check it out. The link is in the description below. In case you guys haven't noticed, I do have a Discord channel for my community on this channel. And if you want to be a part of it, it is free. The link is in the description below. You can sign up. This is basically a 24/7 Rams channel, and we are almost at 1,100 members. So if you want to be a part of it, just hit the link in the description below.